Well, it's yours truly, Roger Thunder, wisdom keeper and storyteller. This is part 3 in the series of Crazy Horse, Tsunke Wheatgo. Man, I have trouble remembering some of these names sometimes, and when I do a video, I gotta go look in the library. But most of the stuff is right off the top of my head, so I might make a mistake or two, and then I'll go back and correct it, start thinking about it. For instance, in the previous videos on part 1 and part 2, Crazy Horse, I mentioned his girlfriend's name, the woman, it's Black Buffalo Woman, it's not Black Buffalo Robe. I don't know where I got the robe from. Black Robe, something came into my mind about that, so. And it's tough remembering all these names like He Dog and Gall and Man Afraid of His Horses and Little Weasel or Good Weasel, and I mean there's just so many names. It's unbelievable trying to remember them all. But I'll just tell the story. Today I'm going to jump into the war part. And let's say the final chapter. Hopefully I will be able to do this in a short amount of time here. Uploading has been something else, but I digress. So the wars actually, there were continual wars, see. I don't want to give you the impression that there was just 3 wars or whatever, because there wasn't. There was war after war, incursion into the Black Hills, the Pahasapa, looking for gold, miners looking for gold, polluting the rivers, digging into the sacred mountains. This was upsetting to the Lakota people and Crazy Horse in general. It was a constant incursion. It was a constant violation of territory and land and way of living and that whole ball of wax, see. So the wars were ongoing. You had little skirmishes where you would have a wagon full of sutlers pull up, and they were being watched all the time, and they knew they were being watched, and there was all kinds of skirmishes that erupted out of that. But it was basically Crazy Horse and the crew getting pissed off at the fact that this has got to end. This can't keep going on like this. What do we do? And so, yeah, there were a lot of skirmishes, but kind of one of the incidents that really triggered, okay, almost like a revenge type thing from the Lakota and Crazy Horse, was this incident that happened at Sand Creek, the famous or infamous Sand Creek Massacre. And that was just kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, as far as like, wow, you know, realization of what the whites would really do. And so what happened at Sand Creek were there was a chief, Black Kettle, and I'm trying to remember, I've heard different stories about who those people were, Cheyenne or Sahiela band of Lakota. But they had a good relationship anyway, so whether it was Cheyenne or whatever, but Black Kettle was the chief of this village that was camped out near Sand Creek. And there had been talk before then that he had talked with the authorities or the white man or the Long Knives or whatever you want to call them. And they said, you'll be safe as long as you fly an American flag by your teepee. something of that nature, some kind of flag. I'm pretty sure it was an American flag or a white flag, or pretty sure it was American. And so he complied. He said, yeah, I can do that. And he put up the flag, and they were living, they were living their lives. And all of a sudden, somebody that was an Indian hater, and let me emphasize that he was also a Christian pastor, all right? Colonel Shivington and the crew, the Colorado Mountain Volunteers, I think they were called. They were all Indian haters, but they formed their own little kind of like volunteer group. I would call it more like a murderous group, vigilante type group, fanatics basically. And so they went out to Sand Creek. This Colonel Shivington set himself up as an authority of sorts, and said, we're going to go rounded up all these Colorado Mountain Volunteers. And they went out there, and long story short, they attacked this village and did the most cruel things that you can imagine to the people. Not only did they kill squaws or the women or whatever, the women of the camp. Squaws, incidentally, is not a bad term. That came later with Oprah Winfrey. It simply means woman in Algonquin. But anyway, they went in there and killed every man, woman, child that they could. And then they proceeded to, after that, now, I'm just telling the truth here, they proceeded to start to mutilate the bodies. And they cut off the private parts of the bodies, the breasts and the genitalia of the women and men. And they actually made necklaces out of that, and they rode through the streets of Denver or somewhere, and the whole crowd was anti-Indian, and they were just cheering the hell out of these people. So this incident, if it's shocking to you, when the word got around that this happened in the Lakota Nation, they literally went on the warpath. They just said, this is crazy. And so they proceeded to go into some wars after that, ramp up stuff. They had a couple of wars. I can't remember the name of the first one, but the first one that started was where they first used the concept of decoys. Well, probably not the first time they used it, but they did first time with the white man, maybe. They had a strategic tactic, or a strategy and a tactic combined, where they would lure the white man out of the fort or whatever, situation he was in that he, perceived to be safe. They would lure them out and get them through decoys, okay? And Crazy Horse was a decoy. He was a master decoy. He actually headed up all the people that served as decoys. And what's a decoy? Well, a decoy is a guy that goes out and rides around and flaunts himself and rides close to and looks at the white man with contempt and gets him riled up because he's seeing an Indian. And so the next thing you know, he's talking to his compatriots or whatever, and they're saying, let's go get him, and they form up a platoon or whatever you want to call it, a brigade, a platoon, and go after that. They go out there in force, and what's this guy doing, and then another guy will appear, another decoy. Okay, one will be over here and one will be over there. And they'll taunt, and they'll actually do shit like get off their horses and act nonchalant, look at the bottom of the hoof, comb the tail, whatever. And these guys are like incredulous. They're like, you know, what do these Indians think they're doing? And so they would go after him, and so the decoy would lure them in down in through a valley, and you know, in one incident, okay, so let me talk about the Fetterman massacre, and that just follows up with the other war that I was just talking about. The first one, I can't remember the name, but that was the one, okay, that started with the decoys. Now we're going into the second one, the Fetterman massacre. And the Fetterman massacre was, I believe the name of the fort was Fort Phil Kearny. And there was a guy named Fetterman in there. There was a whole group of soldiers, long knives. And the Lakota had been watching this fort for a while. And they, you know, their plan was just to get rid of the white man, burn down the forts, get them out of here. They're a problem. And so they went on this little excursion, like I said, to lure. Only this time it started with some people that went out. They knew woodcutters went out to get wood so that they could have fires, obviously, inside the fort, you know, cooking and all that good stuff. So they had wood details that would go out there and get wood. And so the Lakota knew this, and Crazy Horse knew this. He was a master at this stuff. He would go out there and attack them, but he wouldn't kill them all. He might kill one or two of the woodcutters and then leave it for the rest to go back in a big panic. And that's exactly what happened. And so they went back, and the commander of the fort, I think, sent out this guy Fetterman. Well, I know it was Fetterman. I'm just trying to remember. I can't remember the commander of the fort, but he said, okay, go out there and see what you can do, and go after these people, you know, take care of the situation. Only don't go over that. I don't want to see you go over that certain ridge out there. I want you to stay within bounds. I want you wandering off after them in unknown territory. The guy obviously had some smarts. But Fetterman was just one of these guys, it's like Shivington, that just wanted to kill Indians, man, just hated Indians. And so he went out there with his boys, and they got all riled up, and, you know, they argued with each, should we do this or do that? And here comes Crazy Horse. Galloping around, sashaying around, sassing around, actually. And so they immediately put two and two together and said, you know, this is the guy that attacked the wood gathering outfit. And so they fell for it, and that was a decoy. See, he was like a master decoy, and in that particular incident, he got them chasing him and some others, a couple other decoys, to make it look like that was the only group of Indians that were there. So they had to have about, let's say, maybe 8 to 10 Indians, decoys, whatever, to make it look like it was something worth chasing after, you know. And so Fetterman started after this group of warriors, native warriors. Crazy Horse got off his horse and started fiddling around with the mane or something, and they were really close. I mean, bullets were whizzing by him, and they were like incredulous. Isn't this guy afraid of us? But from that point on, he would time it, and then he would jump back on his horse when he thought that he could get away, or, you know, that was enough time to lure him a little bit more. And so they chased him, and they chased these decoys. Long story short, they went over the ridge because guy says, yeah, he told us not to go over the ridge, but this guy hated Indian. We're going over that ridge. And so they went over the ridge, and on the other side of the ridge was hundreds, literally hundreds of Lakota warriors waiting up in ambush, right? This is how they did it. And the Fetterman group went in there, and they just came out of nowhere, surrounded them, took out every one of them. I think there might have been, again, they might have let one guy live to go back and tell the others, hey, look what we did, Look what they did to us, or whatever. So that was the Fetterman massacre. It was, but, never mind that they massacred Indians. No, if the Indians got the better of you in a battle, you were massacred. So that's the word they put on it. They were into spin back then too, baby. Let's spin it. It was a massacre. They killed us all, just like at the Battle of Little Bighorn. Now, I guess I'll go to there next. The Battle of Little Bighorn, or the Greasy Grass, or it could be known by either one of those names, the Battle of the Greasy Grass, or the Battle of Little Bighorn, or Custer's Last Stand. But before that, I got to fill you in on what was happening, before that was people were getting restless. And so one of the people that were getting restless, leaders of the Lakota, was a guy named Sitting Bull. He's on the wall behind me up there, the top picture. You probably can't see it too well. It's right above the Red Road Prayer Circle emblem up there. But Sitting Bull was, he was a very holy man. He was a supreme medicine man, and he was later on in years at that time. And I should have brought some water in here. Anyway, Sitting Bull was getting on. And, but he was, kind of like a spiritual leader. He was like the supreme, to me, he was kind of like the supreme Lakota medicine man. And, he started gathering people together and saying, it's time to do something for real. We need to get together. We need to talk. We need to, have a council, have a powwow. And so they did, and they started gathering in this area that was near the Little Bighorn, the Greasy Grass, and this little valley there. And as they were gathering, they knew why they were going into council, and Crazy Horse was revved up because he was like, this guy is talking my language. And they were. This guy is talking my language. In other words, we're on the same page here. We are out to eliminate the white man, period, end of story. It's a pestilence. It's got to be gotten rid of, or we're going to be gotten rid of. And that was the council, basically, in Cheyenne, and all kinds of different tribes came together that had never come together before, except for the Crows. They were more on Custer's side. And the Crows were always the enemies of the Lakota anyway. But the Crows ended up being point men and scouts for people like that were coming. So this council was to get ready for what they knew was coming, and what was coming was the first guy, 3 stars, they called him, or General Miles, Bearcoat Miles. Later he became known by the Apaches as what? Nantan Lupon. Same guy. He ended up later on in the Apache Wars. with Geronimo. Okay. First he's dealing with Crazy Horse. So this guy had a... he did run into the badasses of the nation, obviously. But they got him first, you know. They did a scouting party out when they were getting together at the Greasy Grass. They did a scouting party out, and they found 3 stars coming in with, gee, I don't know how many people he had, 1,300 maybe, soldiers coming in with all kinds of stuff, you know, cannons, artillery, everything. Lots of soldiers, you know. And so they had 900. I think Crazy Horse had 900 in his band. And but they were on a mission. They said, we got to stop this. We're outnumbered. But they were better fighters. They were guerrilla fighters, you know. They didn't have as many guns, but that was a problem, you know. But they were supreme warriors with lance and bow. And man, they could take out 2 or 3 people in seconds, really. 2 or 3 with a bow. In 30 seconds, you could probably take out, because they were down with it, okay? While the soldier was reloading and trying to put this cartridge back in and all that, they were flinging arrows, okay? And those arrows were deadly. So they went in there and they stopped Bearcoat Miles. They stopped him in his tracks. They didn't kill him all, but they did stop him, and they confused the enemy, and the enemy was in disarray and was not set to go further from that point. But, and that's a big but, after that battle they went back, Crazy Horse and everybody went back to the campsite where everything was. And you know what's interesting, I'll get that out about this, is when these battles were about to take place, Crazy Horse would go out and he'd do a gathering of the warriors. Okay, this is so cool, really. A gathering of the warriors. And what did that entail? Well, that entailed he went out and everybody knew who Crazy Horse was, and he was, you know, decked out in the hailstone war paint and the flashing lightning on his face, and everybody knew who he was. And he would start going around and around the camp, these different camps. Within the huge camp, there was a bunch of little camps. And he would do what was called a gathering of the warriors, okay? And he would ride around the camp and ride around, and then one brave would get up and another brave would get up, and they'd get on their horses, and pretty soon they were in this frenzy. They were like, yeah, this is it. And so you got maybe 10, 12, 13, 15 warriors out of that camp, and then you'd go to the next one, and it was a beautiful thing, really. An arousing of the spirit, of the courage, right? And hokahe, courage up, my boys. That's a famous term that Crazy Horse uttered. Hokahe. It is a good day to die, basically. That's the way it's interpreted, but it also has the double meaning, you know, yeah, it's a good day to die. We know that, let's go. But it also meant to have courage in that process, you know, in that process. And that's where one of the virtues of the Lakota people come in, the virtue of courage and honor and that type thing. And so basically what happened in this final big battle is, you know, different, there were more soldiers that were separate or came after Miles. that incident at the Rosebud. I think that was the Battle of the Rosebud, the previous thing that I talked about before. So it progressed on to the Battle of the Little Bighorn, or into the Battle of the Greasy Grass, and it ended up where everybody was back at the camp and everything, and everybody was kind of partying. They were going through things like sun dances, where the Sitting Bull, let's get back to him. Sitting Bull was a sun dancer, and it was a ritual where you pierced yourself and prayed and had visions and got out of body and actually was in complete contact with Great Spirit. And they would do this thing. He pierced himself on his arms 50 times, took pieces of flesh off of his arm, so that it would help him get in a state of mind, or an offering state of mind, or a giving state of mind, a loving giving state of mind. This is how that has to be interpreted. That's what it was, as a medicine man, and called down Great Spirit, and he had visions. Okay, Sitting Bull had visions and dreams, lucid dreams. And one of the dreams was famous, and that dream was he woke up, or he came out of his vision, and he told everybody that he saw soldiers falling from the sky, upside down, falling from the sky, and they were basically in big trouble. I don't know what the exact vision is, but they were dead. They were dead soldiers falling from the sky. And so he declared that there would be an upcoming battle, which was the Battle of Little Bighorn. I think Medicine Tail Coulee was a river there. I'm not sure. But anyway, in came Benteen, this guy named Benteen, and another guy named Reno, and another guy, the main guy, Custer. So a three-prong attack came in. But it wasn't real coordinated. They were kind of full of themselves, and they never expected to run into what they ran into, which was probably, I forget the count, but there were thousands, of tribal people there in teepees. There were so many horses they had to keep moving them around because they ate all the grass, and so they had to move them to another place. And so there was a three-prong attack, and everybody came into action. One guy sounded the warning. Some people got killed at first, but they were up in arms in a matter of seconds, minutes, whatever. And basically moving in and cutting off these attacks. So they cut off Benteen, and they cut off Reno. And they separated them. They just moved in, and there were many warriors like Gaul, not just Crazy Horse, but there were warriors like Gaul and He-Dog, and all kinds of people were involved in this. And Gaul really made a name for himself because he moved in and he had a really big part in the whole outcome. Actually, he went in ferociously. And so Crazy Horse, of course, was right in the fray, and he did kind of a cutting off action. This is what I read. He did kind of a cutting off action that separated Custer, and Custer was, beside himself at that point. Probably out of pure anger and probably out of pure realization that he messed up big time. And getting into that situation, he didn't know the strength of the enemy and the resolve, basically, is what it amounts to. And so that was the Battle of Little Bighorn, Custer's last stand, and there's a million stories. Don't get me wrong here. I could be here all day. I'm trying to keep the video shorter. Seems like, I don't know. My second series didn't get as many views, and I'm wondering about YouTube sometimes. I really am. Or just lack of attention or whatever. I don't know. Jury's out on that one, but anyway, I enjoy talking about Crazy Horse, and this is part 3. So let me continue. A lot of stuff happened after that battle. They won the battle, but it was the battle that blew the minds of everybody on the East Coast and Washington, and they really sat up and took notice at that point and said, all right, you had Sheridan, you had guys, their motto was basically, the only good Indian is a dead Indian. That's where that's where that term came from. Sheridan, I do believe, the only good Indian is a dead Indian. So you could see the mindset after that. And so basically the incursion, to make a long story short and get to the final chapter of Crazy Horse and his death, there was major incursions and people moving in and regrouping, and the long knives and the blue coats, and which are one and the same basically, are gearing up, and they're saying, okay, they're moving in for the kill now. And so Sitting Bull ended up having to go to Canada with his people. He went up through that northern way. And that's a whole nother story, man. Those people lasted a long time. It really did. They went to Canada, and that's a whole nother story, though. But Crazy Horse and the people around the area of like Fort Robinson and around that area, they fought as long as they could. They hung out as long as they could until winter, and just more and more white men and soldiers, and they were constantly having to move around and repitch their camp, and just it got irritating, and they didn't have enough food. Things were getting bad. Things did get bad, all right? And so you don't want to mistake that part of it. That's the part of it you don't want to mistake, is that things did get bad for the Lakota Nation. And so it got to the point, okay, so where Crazy Horse was just, he thought of his people, He thought, well, here we go. I just wanted to be a loner, but here I am, and I have to do something. So he basically brought his people in. He surrendered. And see, it shouldn't have been like a surrender, because there was plenty of people that were already in there or whatever. There were plenty of loafers and people around the fort, and all Lakota people and all kinds of stuff. It was just he was a holdout. See, he was a lone wolf. He was a wild Lakota was the word they used, a wild Lakota. And he was. Supreme warrior, supreme fighter, stood up to the very end. So, as he went into Fort Robinson, wasn't it what he expected? He thought he was going to go in there and basically maybe have a conference or a powwow and be put under house arrest, because there were plenty of other chiefs that were already there. And he basically, when he went into this room, he saw iron bars on windows, iron bars on windows, and it freaked him out. He went, no, this is not, ain't having this. What's this about? You know, as best I can tell from all accounts, he was tricked. Okay, so when he turned around, his first thought was, I'm getting the hell out of here. And so he turned around and he started off out the door. And there were people, there were all kinds of Lakota people around him. Okay, this is the part where the dream comes in. This is the part where the dream comes in of the people in my previous videos. His dream about these hands reaching up of his own people and pulling them back down into the water or whatever. And so at the very end, the day he died, is that all these people were around, and there was a guy named Little Big Man. Little Big Man. I think they even made a movie. I don't know if it was, I don't think it was, they just used the name, but it was a good movie. But there was a guy named Little Big Man, and he grabbed, Crazy Horse actually had a blanket or something around him, and he had a knife in there. He knew, you know, you're not a good warrior and don't go equipped somehow. And when he reached for his knife, Little Big Man supposedly saw him reaching for his knife and grabbed his arms. And at the same time, okay, that these people were surrounding his own people and his arms were being grabbed. You got to picture this. This is heavy. A soldier comes out with a bayonet and sticks it in Crazy Horse's back. And that was it. I mean, he lived for a while. They actually took him in a room and was going to put him on a cot and all this bullshit, and he said, no, I don't want to be on the cot, put me on the floor. I don't want to be on the cot, just put me on the floor. That's deep. Yeah, that's deep. Think about that, really. Mother Earth, Mother Earth. And so he lived a little bit longer, and finally just succumbed to his injuries, and that was it. And his parents came and got him. And incidentally, I might say at this point, there are no pictures. There are no pictures. Okay. Not of this video. Doing this video anyway, historically or any other way. There are no pictures of Crazy Horse. None whatsoever. There are people that claim there's pictures, and they say this is Crazy Horse. There are no pictures. He never would let his picture be taken. He didn't want his soul taken, is what it is said, or he realized it would fuck with his soul. Excuse my French. But that was the, you know, that was the nitty-gritty of it. And so he went out in martyrdom, really. I mean, just so many people loved Crazy Horse, and it was a form of martyrdom. He, in his dream, now this is a beautiful thing. It's a good ending. I know this is getting long. In the original dream, what did he have? He was rising up out of the lake. He had red-tailed hawk behind him. He had the thunders. He was a thunder dreamer. Think about this. He was a thunder dreamer, a heyoka, somebody that was contrary to all popular. They didn't know what he was doing. It was a very spiritual place to be. So he was a thunder dreamer, and he had this dream and this vision and the force, which I describe, but I'll go over it a little bit in this. You should know about it. because this could be a standalone video. He came out, and the people's hands, there were people's hands, his own people pulling him back down, and there were the thunder beings and the storms behind him, and he got visions of how he should paint, do his war paint, and how he should act, but he didn't know exactly what the ending would be. Well, that was the ending. That was the ending. His own people holding him, pulling him down, not letting him, and he'd been challenged before by other chiefs, and they were jealous of him. A lot of people were jealous of him. Well, of course they would be. The guy was, he was the Lakota people, him and Sitting Bull, as far as I'm concerned. The spirit of the Lakota people. The warriors are the ones with the spirit, and the ones that are the strong warriors are ones with the strongest spirit. Where do you see that today? Anywhere? Anyway. So that's it. I think I'll end on that note. Review this video first. I might make some mistakes somewhere. But again, as a storyteller, I'm relying totally on recall. And I got a million different things going through my mind all the time somewhere about battles and the Apache Wars and Al Sieber and Geronimo Goyathway. I mean, when you're listening to one of my videos, it's like sitting around a campfire. That's the way it's supposed to be. We're just bullshitting and talking, and I'm telling stories. But the stories I tell could be something you might want to hear. So, I got a donation, and that person, some people, I don't know who it is, but her name was Charlotte on the email, so you should know who you are. Thank you. Appreciate that. I always appreciate support for the purpose. My purpose, or for what I do, just to be here and really just talk around the campfire. So I thank you. Thank you for that. spiritofcrazyhorse.com is in the show notes below. That's where my books are, and donations and email. So, yeah, go there. That's where I'm going to leave it today. So I'll say, wash day. Okay, hey, courage up, my boys.